Another big game awaits. This one doesn't get much tougher than this one. And it's weird to say that about Arsenal, who are top of the league, 7 points clear. Manchester United visit the Emirates, and they haven't won there for ages, even though we do have some great memories of previous wins. Arsenal, over the last few years at home especially, have been really difficult to beat. But that's Manchester United's task this weekend. Go there and keep the momentum that was built up last weekend going. Brushing Manchester City aside in the way that they did has made people feel a lot more optimistic. You don't know exactly what's going to happen here, but there's no question about it. This Arsenal game will be a hell of a lot tougher than whatever Manchester City put up last weekend. They have the best defense in the country. For me, the best defense probably in Europe, even though the social media debates nowadays. Did you see that debate this week? Arsenal of today versus Manchester United's 08 team. Who gets in over who? Widely ridiculed, but that's and rightly so, by the way. It is testament, I suppose, to how well Arsenal have done. They haven't won anything yet, but for me, I think they will go on and win the Premier League. And you just look at the state of Europe as well, and you think, don't really want them to go too far in the Champions League either. Hopefully they have that week later in the season where everything kind of falls down and they're brought back down to earth a little bit. But this weekend, Manchester United face a really, really difficult task. Arsenal beat United in the first game of the Premier League season back in August. United played really well on that day, and we had some hope going into the season ahead. Arsenal won courtesy of a set piece and some bad goalkeeping. I have some kind of fear and some kind of belief that United may end up suffering from that again. But overall, I'm optimistic going into this game. So I'm going to be talking about Arsenal. This is Manchester United on this shortened episode of the Promised Land podcast. Please join me. Please subscribe to the channel if you've not done so already. All the links are in the description. Also, follow me on social at @Scott Saunders as well. And like the video, subscribe, 5-star reviews, and all of that would be really, really, really appreciated. You can also check me out. I had the pleasure of being able to look ahead to this game with my friend Harry Symeou, an Arsenal fan, for the Premier League. And it's on Sky Sports now and TNT Sports as well as part of the Premier League preview show. So that was nice to do. I was rocking a 1990s United black away kit with Eric Cantona on the back. Lovely stuff. Absolutely lovely stuff. And I touched on that in that segment, the optimism that I now feel, which I think is shared among the fan base. Now, I don't think losing this weekend is going to dampen that too much. I suppose it depends on the nature of it. But I think what we got to see out of Manchester United last weekend and what we got to see out of Michael Carrick's and his coaching staff's approach to that game was much more cohesion, real hard work, and you will need that in spades again this weekend because Arsenal are a team that can beat you in a variety of ways, even if they're not the free-flowing, high-scoring team that really entertains you. They are still your kind of modern football team, really. They're bunch of giants, really. They got Declan Rice in the midfield, enough technical proficiency in there. Zubimendi's really good. That centre-back pairing, like I say, Gabriel and Saliba is really good, non-comparison to Rio Ferdinand and Man Utd. But all over the pitch, Arsenal have built a squad which is capable of winning things, I think. It's just a matter of time until they do, unfortunately, for me to say. But that's not to say that United can't hurt them this weekend. I'm going into this thinking that what United will need to do and the approach that Michael Carrick will need to take, to me, I think is quite similar to last weekend. I wouldn't really expect to see too many changes, too many different ideas. I think the foundations of this should be the same. The ideas should be quite similar as well, even if Arsenal will be, I think, a lot more difficult to break down and transition against. I think City, with their young defense last week and the fact that they didn't have super mobile midfielders in there, it allowed United a way out. I think Arsenal will be a lot more difficult to counter-attack against and break down because of the physical dominance that they have, especially through the center of the pitch. But that's not to say that we shouldn't be optimistic. I think just Liverpool a few weeks ago went to the Emirates and frustrated Arsenal and, I suppose, unlucky not to win. They hit the bar. They drew the game and frustrated Arsenal for long parts of it. And I think United, if they go in with the same dynamism and the same discipline and the same effort levels as they did last week, I think United have got a chance here. I think United have got a chance here of taking something away from the game. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think there's any possibility that United can go and win this game? Because it's so weird how the feeling has changed so quickly. You know, just a couple of weeks ago, we were all thinking, especially me, I was talking on the podcast about how apathetic I was and how miserable things felt and how there was disagreements over who the head coach should be and the style of play and the formation. And now things can change so fast. And now we're looking at a team that gave a really good account of themselves last weekend, had a massive win. They're 5th in the Premier League, ahead of the Premier League weekend as well. And while there will be other games that I really judge United on in terms of their credentials for top 5, regardless, even if they go and win this weekend, I still have doubt against Fulham next weekend that United will go and be able to brush them aside as well, because that's a long-term problem. You know, breaking down teams that you're expected to beat, United historically can't do that. And in big games, they do show a different side to themselves. But it is so nice to go in with a bit of optimism and so nice to be able to, I suppose, trust, in a sense, in a better level of performance from the team. Now, Carrick and his coaching staff last week, they set up the United team in a way which nullified all of Manchester City's threats. And I think the approach will be quite similar this weekend. Maybe the areas which you target to expose Arsenal on the break and in transition will be different areas. I think those wide areas, if Arsenal are going to hem United in and try and pin them back and really build the pressure throughout this game at the Emirates, I think United have opportunities potentially to hit them on the break, especially in the wide areas. I'll get into who I would expect to start in a second. Maybe there'll be some tweaks, but I think the fundamentals will be the same here. I think it's all about making sure, especially what we saw United do last week in the wide areas in a defensive sense. Patrick Dorgu and Luke Shaw, Ahmad and Diogo Dalot as well. They would often work together. Sometimes Casemiro would come over. Sometimes, you know, other players like Kobbie Mainoo would go over to the other side, and they would make sure that they doubled up on the wide players. And in City's case last week, it was Semenyo and Doku. This week, I know Bukayo Saka hasn't scored in, I think, 15 games for Arsenal in all comps. And I think he's on his longest run without scoring for Arsenal at the moment. Touch wood, that doesn't happen this weekend. But I think looking at him, I still see him as incredibly dangerous. There was one moment against Liverpool, I think, a few weeks ago where he took the ball and you know he's left-footed. You know that he is always making that run inside, but now he seems to have added that extra bit of dynamism to his game, which means that he can go the other way as well. And I think what United really need to do is really stick into the task of defensive discipline. And I think the wingers, whoever is named out there going backwards, will really need to work hard to double up and make sure that their fullbacks aren't left isolated. So I think Michael Carrick showed last week that that was something that was really important to his approach and his plan, and United's players executed that really well. I would expect to see more of the same this weekend as well. The tenacity and the intensity has to be the same as well. If United are going to get through this game, they need to frustrate. They need to frustrate Arsenal, because I think what a big part of Arsenal's game is at the moment is dominating territory and ball retention and trying to wear teams down with, you know, they've got a really good mix in there of everybody in midfield, really. You think of Declan Rice and everything that he offers. I think he's your archetypal modern Premier League central midfielder, the heartbeat of that team, really. You got Martin Odegaard may start in there. There's been a funny thing actually going around. I think Martin Keown said made his choice between Odegaard and Bruno Fernandes ahead of this game and got a lot of stick for it on social media. There was a Premier League poll which was put out, and I think Bruno Fernandes, after like 140,000 votes, was winning that poll 90% to 10, which just goes to show really how important Bruno Fernandes is and how highly rated he is in comparison to Martin Odegaard. But, you know, Odegaard still, if he plays, is still a real danger that United will need to look out for. And Martin Zubimendi in there as well. He just adds that little bit of extra quality in possession. So I think that will be Arsenal's game plan, I think, is to pin United back and wear United down. But I think you got to look at the weaknesses in that midfield if there are any. Declan Rice is essentially, I just said, the archetypal midfielder. There aren't many weaknesses to his game at all. But if you can get around Zubimendi and potentially Odegaard as well, there may be physical battles that you can win in there against those players if you do manage to turn the ball over and transition it. You do have Gabriel and Saliba, who I'm sure will start. The fact that they are there and they are present maybe will dictate who I would start up front. I'll get to my predicted lineup in a second as well. But knowing the quality of the team that United are coming up against and those players that I just mentioned there, United will have to hang in the game. We know that Arsenal will be on top at certain points. United have to just essentially embrace that and roll with the punches and play on the fears, I suppose, of what the Emirates crowd are thinking. I know that there is frustration in the Arsenal fan base at the moment, and obviously a lot of finger pointing at them in terms of how good they are from open play. Now, I think that's certainly a side of Arsenal's game that does need to develop. But, you know, if Arsenal are showing some limitations in opening teams up and being the most entertaining team in the land, you know, they are top of the league. United have to play on that, and United have to frustrate the home crowd and try and use that to their advantage. So what I would expect from United is the approach similar to last week, really. United can lean into that because they're away from home. They won't obviously have the crowd, the home crowd behind them, but United have a great traveling support, and I'm sure will make a lot of noise as well. Lean on that and make sure that you don't give anything cheap away. Make sure that you do the basics right. Make sure that you're doubling up on players, condensing the space in there. What we saw last week was the two centre-backs, Harry Maguire and Lichen Martinez, and Kobbie Mainoo and Casemiro as well, all played really well. That core will need to play disciplined, win their duels, and make sure that they shut out Arsenal. And I'm confident that they can do that for a certain while. The thing for me is you got to make sure that if you get your chances, you have to scare the home crowd. You have to make sure that you offer a threat going in the other way. In the transition, if you pass those balls or you loft those balls out wide, and you do have players like Ahmad on the right, or Patrick Dorgu, or Mateus Cunha, or somebody else on the left side, offering that option higher up, pulling into those spaces that Arsenal don't really cover, I think that is potentially where United can have a little bit of success on the transition. You try and pull players out of position, and what we saw last week was that Ahmad and Patrick Dorgu were particularly good at carrying the ball and particularly good at offering width to United on counter-attack breaks. And that was obviously summed up in the lead up to Bryan Mbeumo's goal from Bruno Fernandes's assist. The transition was there. I don't think it'll be as easy this weekend to exploit as that, but United will have their moments. Ahmad and Patrick Dorgu both busting a gut to get up and offering that width, in a sense, to confuse the City defenders that were back there. It offered and opened up more space and gave more time to Bruno Fernandes to pick the right pass, and he made the right pass after a feint in the opposite direction. Bryan Mbeumo pulled off and had, I think, about 6 yards in order to get his shot away. United will need to make sure that they not blueprint and copy that, but keep the principles the same. And I really feel as though United can have a bit of joy potentially if the ball is turned over. Let's say they're pinned back. The ball's turned over. United win it back. And if you leave Ahmad and Patrick Dorgu or whoever starts on that left side high in certain moments, and you pick the right moments, obviously they'll have to double up at the right moments as well. Spot your opportunities and try and loft the balls out there. You have two good ball carriers. In Ahmad's sense, like, he's diminutive, obviously, but incredibly strong. And Patrick Dorgu as well offers that engine. You know, he's got ability to run up and down. He's got tenacity. You can never question his work rate, even though he's had some difficult times over his first year at United. One thing you can't call into question is how hard he works. For me, I'll say it now, I think Patrick Dorgu should start in that left role again. Personally, that's what I think. There will be opportunities for United to get at Arsenal and just prey on the weaknesses and look for the spaces. I think Arsenal will dominate that central area, really, and United need to exploit. Now, speaking to Harry, my Arsenal fan friend, obviously, I'm sure if some of you listen to the podcast and have known the work that I've done in the past, you'll know who Harry is. He himself identified those areas out wide as potential areas to hurt Arsenal. So I think United need to look at that and carefully craft a plan and carefully craft their way out of situations where they're defending deep against Arsenal, because that will happen at times, I think. Arsenal will try and get the crowd behind them, but it's up to United to frustrate. And I do think as well, maybe I'll get into the lineup now. Now, we hear from Michael Carrick on Friday. He essentially said that there's no new injury concerns, and I would probably expect that he goes a similar way, given the fitness concerns aren't really there. I think, look, Matthias de Ligt being out of this game, I think, is a blow. I think he's a couple of weeks away, Michael Carrick said in his pre-match press conference on Friday. You know, what you could really do with his aerial dominance, but you can see that there's other players in there. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Aiden Heaven comes into this team. I don't know, because of Arsenal's huge threat in the air. We'll see. It'd be a big one for him, obviously, coming from Arsenal in the first place to join United. You saw last week that Licha Martinez dealt really well with Erling Haaland. If United can hang in the game, and this would be the approach for me, really, try and hang in the game, keep things tight, make sure that you condense space and stop Arsenal and frustrate them. Set pieces will always be really a big concern. And I'm sure Arsenal will lean on those set pieces in the lead up to, trying to break the deadlock. I'm absolutely certain of that. We know how good they are from set pieces, to the point where it's kind of boring, actually. But, you know, you have to... If you find a way, like if you find a way to crack the code, and you found a way to score goals and you perfect that art, you know, why wouldn't you lean on it? United themselves have had a bit more success from set pieces this season as well. Sene Lammens will need a big day. Harry Maguire will need a big day in defending those. Casemiro as well. All of those kinds of players will be really important in defending set pieces. And if United can, say, get to half-time, get to the hour mark without conceding a goal, I think that is potentially where things may turn. Things may turn a little bit. And that's the way that I would go about it. Try and keep it tight for a little while, because then you've got options off the bench. And if Arsenal are trying to go and make sure that they're hammering home that they're going to win the league, I'm sure there will be a time in the game where, if things are drifting, that Arsenal will push on. That Arsenal will try and go and push United aside and try and win the game. In those times, in those areas of the game, if United is still level, they do have options off the bench to come in and change this. Now, I said I would keep the lineup the same, so that is Sene Lammens. Maybe Mazraoui comes back in, actually. I said the same. Maybe Mazraoui comes back in. So I'll do Lammens, Mazraoui, Maguire, Martinez, Luke Shaw, Casemiro and Kobbie Mainoo in midfield, Ahmad outright, Bruno in the 10, Patrick Dorgu back left, and Brian Mbeumo through the middle again. I think what Mbeumo did really well last week was spot the spaces between centre-back and full-back, or between defenders, or try and identify those spaces in order to hurt Man City on the transition. I'm sure that, like, he's very intelligent. His first touch is really good. He's a cold finisher as well, as we saw last week. I think United could really do with that again. I would lean on him. But you do have options off the bench. If you can hang in there for a while, Matheus Cunha, big option off the bench, made a big difference last week in the game against City. Benjamin Sesko we didn't see last week, but if Arsenal are pushing forward, I think there is a side to Benjamin Sesko's game so far that we haven't really seen utilised. And Carrick spoke about this week as well. Good on the last line. We haven't seen him like absolutely bust a gut yet and be, to my memory anyway, like properly one-on-one with the defender, or have like a foot race with the defender that he's playing against, to, you know, go and get on the end of a chance. We haven't really seen that yet. And I think Sesko can be maybe relied upon at some point in the game to just bring a different option through the middle if Arsenal are going to push on. Now, I'm obviously thinking here that United are going to do this thing and actually keep the game relatively tight until the 60 minutes plus has gone, so United can use some other weapons that they've got off the bench. Mason Mount was important last week as well, I think, in the very end of the game. But I look to Cunha and Sesko in particular and think they are different options that United can use off the bench who can change the dynamic in the game. I wouldn't start Sesko, because I think you look at Gabriel and Saliba and you think, Arsenal, if they're going to cover anywhere in this defensive transition, I think you look at Gabriel and Saliba and you think that both of them are pretty well equipped at defending 1v1. I think starting Sesko in those against either of those defenders from the start, really, I think you're kind of writing it off. I think you go with something a little bit different. I think Mbeumo is smart. He scored against Arsenal before as well for Brentford. So I think that's what I would do. And I did say that the lineup that I would pick would be the same as last week. I forgot that Mazraoui was back. So hopefully he will be reintroduced to the team, because I think most of us really prefer that option at right back, I would say. But Diogo Dalot, I think last week did quite well, even though he was lucky to stay on the pitch for all that time after the red card flashpoint potentially in the first 10 minutes or so. But that's how I would approach the game for United. And I'm going into this feeling I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see what United can do. I'm excited to see what they can offer. And I don't think at the end of the day that a defeat here is going to be the end of the world if United do come out of this empty-handed. Anything else, I think, is a bonus. As long as United's performance levels are what we expect, as long as United's performance levels are incredibly hardworking, and if you can look at every player on that pitch and think you gave everything today, I think that will go a long way to having belief over the course of the rest of the season that United can go and get in the top 5. They're currently 5th in the league going into this. There are games around them, actually, which I think Chelsea go to Crystal Palace this weekend, and Palace aren't in great form. But this weekend it's not a freebie as such, but like Liverpool go to Bournemouth. Bournemouth have given trouble to some teams. They beat Spurs a few weeks ago. Villa play Newcastle. Chelsea go to Crystal Palace. Brentford, I think you'd expect them to beat Forest potentially. But at the same time, you don't think Brentford will hang around in this, top 5 race for all that long. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. There's 16 games to go and they got 33 points and they're right in the mix. But what I'm trying to say here is that winning this game would be an incredible, unexpected bonus. Drawing this game would be great. But losing it really with all the fixtures that are around them, I don't think United will drop off the race too much for top 5. And I think after this, United do go into a run of games against Fulham and Tottenham. Then they got some away games, Everton and West Ham, I think, later on in February as well, which they'd be difficult games, those, but I think they are more winnable. And I think it's about getting through this, staying in the race for the top 5, and anything that United can get out of this weekend would be a big plus. But I want to see a level of performance which is as committed as last week. I want to see United apply themselves in the right way. And fingers crossed, United can take something out of this game, because there are even though Arsenal are really good, there are limitations to Arsenal. There are frustrations that their supporters have. And I think that will creep in at some point with the Emirates. United need to play on that. And I think Michael Carrick, after last week, has showed that he will play to his players' strengths and feed in instructions about how to get the best out of the players in certain duels all over the pitch. So fingers crossed that good feeling can continue. Let me know your thoughts in the comments about how you think United will do this weekend. I'm going to go with a 1-1. I think United will get something out of this. I don't think Arsenal absolutely desperately need to win. And I don't think United do either. So I think if this game is at 1-1 in the 80th minute or something like that, I think that we could maybe see this game drift towards the end. I don't know. But let me know your thoughts. Can United go and win at the Emirates? I don't think they'll happen, but crazy things have happened, So let me know in the comments how you feel this game will go. Who's going to be particularly important for United? What would your starting 11 be? And get in the comments and let me know. Hopefully, United can come away with a positive result. I'll see you after the game for another episode of the Promised Land podcast. Please subscribe to the pod anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Google, Spotify, and on YouTube as well. The links are in the description. Follow me on social at @Scott Saunders, as well on X, Instagram, and TikTok. And I'll see you soon, everyone, for another episode of the pod. Thanks very much.